Thousands of government workers are furloughed. Others, the ones considered essential, have to show up for work regardless, but they still do not get a paycheck until the government reopens. And there does not seem to be any idea of when that could happen.
13 News State House reporter Emily Longnecker is here now with the latest on some proposals from lawmakers who want to figure out a way to pay these essential workers now. So, Emily, let's start with the proposal that would give a paycheck to air traffic controllers.
Right.
Is that right?
Right. So these are some of the essential workers, the folks who help land thousands of planes every day safely here in this country at our airports. Indiana Congressman Andre Carson has put forward the Aviation Funding Stability Act of 2025. It would allow air traffic controllers to start getting paid again, even as this shutdown continues. Now, right now, because of the shutdown, federal agencies like the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, aren't receiving money because Congress failed to pass new funding bills on October 1st. That's when the government's new fiscal year started. So here's how this proposal would work from Carson and his colleague, Democratic Congressman Steve Cohen from Tennessee. The FAA would take money from its airports and airways trust fund. That's a dedicated fund used by the FAA. The money in it comes from the taxes on plane tickets, frequent flyer miles, and airline fuel, just to name a few of its sources. Congressman Carson sits on the Transportation Committee, and he's a senior member on the Aviation Subcommittee.
Look, we know universally that air traffic controllers deserve to be paid. They're considered essential workers, which effectively means they're required to work through the shutdown without pay, just like our congressional staffers. And I've really been in constant communication along with our team, with leaders in the industry, and they tell me that this job is already stressful. You know, working without pay only adds to that stress.
So how likely is this to be considered?
Well, Carson called this a negotiation chip, and he said he doesn't expect Speaker Johnson to call the House back into session to address this act. But that said, he called the Transportation Committee one of the most bipartisan in Congress, and he says there's a lot of contention right now on both sides of the aisle in the midst of both parties, and he says he's looking at this as a way to reach across the aisle and address this issue of pay for these employees head on.
And Carson's proposal is not the only one that would work to try and get these essential workers a paycheck in the shutdown.
Right, that's correct. Republican Indiana Senator Todd Young co-sponsored the Shutdown Fairness Act. It would provide funding to pay essential workers, including air traffic controllers and the military. Now, Senator Young issued a statement about it, which said in part, the Shutdown Fairness Act would make sure these hard-working Americans are paid on time for the work they perform, just as they deserve. But we know today the Senate voted earlier and it did not pass. That's because it didn't get the 60 votes required in the Senate to pass it. That would have required some support from Senate Democrats. This act would only have paid essential federal workers and military personnel during the shutdown. Democrats, they had a different bill which would have paid all essential workers, not just would have paid all furloughed employees, non-essential ones as well.